As the hungry boy sat alone with his empty lunchbox, a single tear rolling down his cheek, a girl with nothing offered him everything. Their lives intertwined that day, but fate had plans neither could imagine. Where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments and hit that like button for more heartwarming stories that will leave you in tears. Timothy Wilson stared into his empty lunchbox, his small stomach growling loud enough for the entire cafeteria to hear. The 7-year-old's eyes welled with tears as he watched his classmates devouring their sandwiches, fruits, and cookies. His stepsister Vanessa had forgotten to pack his lunch again, her third mistake this week. Timothy knew it wasn't a mistake at all. Ever since his father had married Vanessa's mother 6 months ago, the 10-year-old girl had made it her mission to make his life miserable. "Hey, rich boy, what's wrong? Daddy didn't buy you lobster today." Ish jeered Billy Thompson from the next table. Several children laughed, pointing at Timothy's designer clothes that stood out in the underfunded public school. No one knew that Timothy's father, Edward Wilson, was one of the wealthiest men in America. The billionaire CEO had enrolled his son in this ordinary school to teach him the value of normal life after his late wife had spoiled him rotten. Edward believed his new wife, Diane, and her daughter would help ground Timothy. If only he knew how Vanessa treated his son when no adults were watching. Timothy wiped his tears with his sleeve. He'd been too afraid to tell his father about the missing lunches. What if his dad thought he was just complaining about his new family? What if he disappointed him again? "Why don't you sit with us, Timothy?" a small voice asked. He looked up to see Lily Carson standing beside him, her worn-out dress and scuffed shoes telling their own story. Everyone knew Lily was from the poorest family in the district. Her father had abandoned them years ago, and her mother worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. I don't have any food," Timothy whispered, embarrassed. "That's okay. I can share," Lily said, taking his hand. "My mom always says food tastes better when shared with a friend." As Timothy followed Lily to her table, he couldn't help but wonder, what did a girl who had nothing want from a boy who supposedly had everything? Lily sat Timothy down and opened her shabby lunchbox. Inside was half a peanut butter sandwich and a small bottle of water. Without hesitation, she split the sandwich and handed him half. "This is all you have?" Timothy asked, shocked by the meager meal. "It's not much, but Mom made it with love," Lily smiled, her eyes twinkling. "And now it's made with friendship, too." As they ate, Timothy realized this was the first genuine kindness he'd experienced since his mother's death 2 years ago. Even with all his father's billions, he felt rich for the first time in years. Why is the poor girl sharing her pathetic lunch with the rich kid? Vanessa's voice cut through their moment. She stood over their table, her designer shoes worth more than Lily's entire wardrobe. "Trying to make friends with money, little beggar." "Leave her alone," Timothy said, surprising himself with his courage. "She's my friend." "Friend?" Vanessa laughed cruelly. "Wait until Daddy hears his precious son is hanging out with trash." As she walked away, Lily looked confused. "Why did she call you rich?" Timothy froze. Should he tell her the truth? Would she treat him differently if she knew? And you might be wondering, dear viewers, was this the beginning of a beautiful friendship? Or would the truth about Timothy's wealth create an unbridgeable gap between them? Would Lily still want to be his friend if she knew who he really was? Let's find out. "My dad has a good job," Timothy mumbled, unable to meet Lily's eyes. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it was far from the whole truth. Edward Wilson wasn't just wealthy. He was Timothy Wilson Sr., the founder of Wilson Enterprises, whose face regularly appeared on the covers of Forbes and Fortune magazines. "That's nice," Lily said simply, taking another small bite of her sandwich to make it last longer. "My mum has 3 jobs. She cleans houses in the morning, works at the supermarket during the day, and waitresses at night." Timothy felt a stab of shame. Here he was, heir to billions, while Lily's mother worked herself to exhaustion just to provide half a sandwich for her daughter's lunch. "What about your dad?" he asked cautiously. Something flickered in Lily's eyes, pain quickly masked by practiced indifference. "He left when I was 4. Mum says he couldn't handle responsibility." "My mum died," Timothy offered, finding unexpected comfort in their shared pain. "Cancer, 2 years ago." Lily reached across the table and took his hand. No platitudes, no awkward sympathy, just connection. "Then we both know what it's like to miss someone." For the rest of lunch, they talked about lighter things, favorite colors, blue for him, yellow for her, best subjects, math for him, art for her, and their shared love of dogs. When the bell rang, they parted ways with a promise to meet again tomorrow. As Timothy headed to class, Vanessa appeared beside him, gripping his arm with surprising strength. "Listen, brat, don't think Dad won't hear about your little charity case." "What's wrong with having a friend?" Timothy challenged. Vanessa's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Because people like her are just after our money. Even if she doesn't know it yet, her kind always figures it out eventually." "You don't know anything about her," Timothy pulled away. "And you don't know anything about the real world," Vanessa shot back. "Why do you think Dad put you in this dump instead of Westfield Academy with me? He knows you're weak, just like your mother was." Timothy felt rage building inside him. "Don't talk about my mom." "Or what?" Vanessa taunted. "You'll tell Daddy? Go ahead. He's too busy with my mother to care about your whining." As she strutted away, Timothy wondered if she was right. His father had been increasingly distant lately, absorbed in his new marriage and expanding business. Would he even believe Timothy if he told him about the missing lunches and Vanessa's cruelty? That afternoon, when Timothy's driver arrived to take him home, one concession his father had made to safety, he was surprised to see Edward himself in the back seat. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Edward Wilson, imposing even in casual attire, smiled tightly. "I thought I'd surprise you, son. How was school today?" Timothy hesitated. Should he tell his father everything now? About the lunches, about Vanessa, about Lily? Before he could decide, his father continued, "I received an interesting call from Diane today. Apparently, Vanessa mentioned you've been giving away your lunch to some less fortunate children." Timothy's jaw dropped. The audacity of her lie stunned him silent. "Son, while I admire your generosity, you need to eat. Your stepmother works hard to prepare those lunches." "But," Timothy started. "No buts. You're still recovering from your mother's passing, and you need proper nutrition." Edward squeezed his shoulder. "I'm proud of you for thinking of others, though." Timothy felt the opportunity slipping away. His father believed Vanessa's twisted version without question, but could he blame him? In Edward's eyes, why would Vanessa lie? At home, the sprawling mansion felt colder than ever as Timothy watched Vanessa smirk at him across the dinner table, secure in her victory. But our young Timothy was learning a valuable lesson. In both poverty and wealth, truth can be the first casualty. And I know you're wondering, dear friends, would Timothy find the courage to expose Vanessa's lies, and what would happen when Lily inevitably discovered his family's true status? The answers might surprise you. The next morning, Timothy made a decision. Before leaving his room, he emptied his Spider-Man piggy bank and stuffed $30 into his pocket, his entire savings from birthdays and tooth fairy visits. If Vanessa wouldn't let him have lunch, he'd buy his own. And maybe, just maybe, he could buy something for Lily too. When Timothy arrived at school, he found Lily waiting by the entrance, her smile brightening the cloudy day. "I brought something for you," she said, reaching into her backpack and pulling out a slightly crumpled paper. It was a drawing, 2 stick figures holding hands, one labeled Tim and the other Lily, with "Friends Forever" written in colorful letters across the top. "You made this for me?" Timothy asked, genuinely touched. Last night after Mom went to work. Lily nodded. Do you like it? It's the best present ever, Timothy said, carefully folding it and putting it in his pocket, right next to his money. Throughout morning classes, Timothy kept touching the drawing through his pocket, drawing strength from it. When lunchtime came, he was ready to put his plan into action, but first he had to deal with Vanessa. Just as expected, his lunchbox was empty again. But this time, Timothy wasn't bothered. He closed it calmly and headed for the cafeteria line, where students could buy lunch if they forgot to bring one. Cheeseburger, please, Timothy told the lunch lady, handing over some of his money. And can I get 2 chocolate milks? Udacent armed with his purchases, he scanned the room for Lily. She was sitting alone, her meager lunch, today just an apple, laid out in front of her. Lunch delivery, Timothy announced cheerfully, sliding one of the chocolate milks toward her. Lily's eyes widened. Timothy, I can't. Please, you shared with me yesterday, Timothy insisted. After a moment's hesitation, Lily accepted the milk. Thank you, but where did you get money for all this? I've been saving up, he said truthfully. It wasn't his fault if she assumed he meant saving lunch money rather than birthday cash. They were halfway through their meal when Miss Roberts, their teacher, approached their table. Timothy, could I speak with you for a moment? She asked, her kind face creased with concern. Timothy followed her to a quiet corner of the cafeteria, his stomach knotting with anxiety. Is everything all right at home, Timothy? Miss Roberts asked gently. I've noticed you haven't been eating your packed lunches lately. Timothy stared at his shoes. Was this his chance to tell someone about Vanessa? But what if his father found out he had tattled? Would that make things worse? I just haven't been hungry, he mumbled. Ms. Roberts didn't look convinced. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? Even things that might seem scary or confusing. Timothy nodded without looking up. Everything's fine, Ms. Roberts. Really? Back at the table, Lily was watching him with worried eyes. Is everything okay? Just teacher stuff. Timothy shrugged, trying to sound casual. Hey, do you want to play together at recess? The subject change worked, and soon they were excitedly planning which games they'd play. But across the cafeteria, Vanessa was watching them with narrowed eyes, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping against the table in irritation. After school, Timothy was surprised again to see his father's sleek black Bentley instead of the usual town car. This time, both Edward and Diane were waiting. How was school, sweetheart? Diane asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. At 40, Diane Bennett Wilson was still strikingly beautiful, with the polished appearance of a woman accustomed to luxury. What she lacked in warmth, she made up for in ambition, having successfully secured her position as the second Mrs. Wilson just 8 months after meeting Edward. It was okay, Timothy answered cautiously, sliding into the seat beside his father. Timothy, Miss Roberts called us today, Edward said, his voice measured. She's concerned you're not eating your lunches. Timothy's heart pounded. I told you he's been giving it away, Diane interjected smoothly. Vanessa mentioned he's been trying to impress some little girl. Edward looked at his son with a mixture of concern and disapproval. Son, if you want to help your less fortunate classmates, we can discuss setting up a proper charity program through the Wilson Foundation, but you need to eat. But Dad, Vanessa is trying to look out for her new little brother, Diane finished for him, her voice honey-sweet. We're a family now, Timothy. We need to support each other. Timothy fell silent, recognizing defeat. How could he fight both Vanessa and Diane? His father was completely under their spell. And I know what you're thinking. Would Timothy ever find the courage to stand up to his manipulative stepsister and her cunning mother? Would his father ever see through their facade? The answer will come, but not before things get much more complicated. Over the next 2 weeks, Timothy and Lily became inseparable. He continued buying his lunch and often something small for her too, carefully rationing his savings. Despite Vanessa's glares and occasional taunts, these moments with Lily were the brightest part of Timothy's days. One rainy Tuesday, Timothy was surprised when their teacher announced a special project. "Class, we'll be starting our family heritage presentations next week," Ms. Roberts explained enthusiastically. "Each of you will create a poster about your family history, traditions, and what makes your family special. Parents are invited to attend the presentations." While most children buzzed with excitement, Timothy and Lily exchanged worried glances. For very different reasons, neither was eager to put their family on display. "What are you going to do for your project?" Lily asked as they huddled together during recess, forced indoors by the downpour. Timothy shrugged. "I don't know. My dad's always working. He probably won't even come." "At least your dad is around," Lily said softly. "My mom might not make it either. She can't afford to miss work." Timothy felt that familiar pang of guilt. His father wouldn't attend because he was too busy building an empire. Lily's mother couldn't attend because she was struggling to survive. "Maybe we could help each other," Timothy suggested. "I could come to your house, or you could come to mine." He stopped abruptly, realizing his mistake. Lily brightened. "That's a great idea. You could come to my place. It's really small, but—" "I can't," Timothy blurted out. "My dad, he doesn't let me go to other people's houses." "Oh." Lily's face fell. "Then maybe I could come to yours?" Timothy's mind raced. How could he explain why that wasn't possible without revealing the truth? "My stepmom doesn't like having guests," he said lamely. Lily studied his face. "Timothy, is there something you're not telling me?" Before he could answer, Vanessa appeared behind them, a malicious smile playing on her lips. "Yes, Timothy. Why don't you tell your little friend the truth?" Timothy froze. "Vanessa, don't what?" she asked innocently. "Don't tell her that you live in a 20-room mansion, that your daddy is Timothy Wilson Sr., the billionaire, that you're probably just slumming it with her for some twisted rich kid thrill." Lily looked between them, confusion clouding her features. "What is she talking about, Timothy?" "He's been lying to you this whole time," Vanessa said triumphantly. "Playing poor little hungry boy when his daddy's worth billions. Pathetic, right?" With that parting shot, she flounced away, leaving Timothy facing Lily's stunned expression. "Is that true?" Lily whispered. Timothy couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The fragile friendship they'd built was crumbling before his eyes. "Say something," Lily demanded, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't lie exactly," Timothy finally managed. "My dad does have a good job, it's just bigger than I said." "You let me share my lunch with you," Lily's voice cracked with hurt and betrayal. "Half a sandwich that my mom worked all night to be able to afford. I didn't ask you to, but you didn't stop me either." Lily stood up, gathering her things. "You must have been laughing at me this whole time. Poor silly Lily, thinking she's helping the rich kid." "No, Lily, it wasn't like that." Timothy reached for her arm, but she pulled away. "Don't touch me. Don't talk to me. I never want to see you again." With that, she ran from the room, leaving Timothy alone with the crushing weight of his deception. That afternoon, Timothy climbed into his father's car in silence, his eyes red from crying. "Rough day, buddy?" Edward asked, noticing his son's distress. For once, Timothy didn't hold back. "Vanessa told Lily about us, about our money. Now Lily hates me," Edward sighed. "Son, this is exactly why I was concerned about you getting too close to. Children from different backgrounds. They often don't understand our world." "But Lily's not like that," Timothy protested. "She shared her lunch with me when she thought I didn't have any. She has almost nothing, but she gave me half." Edward raised an eyebrow. "When she thought you didn't have any, have you been pretending to be poor, Timothy?" Trapped by his own words, Timothy could only stare out the window as rain streaked down the glass, mirroring the tears on his face. And now I must ask you, dear viewers, was this the end of Timothy and Lily's friendship? Would a child's innocence and generosity be forever tainted by the harsh realities of wealth and deception? Or would fate offer them another chance? The answer lies just ahead. But first, let's see how our young billionaire handled the aftermath of his exposed secret. The next day, Timothy's seat beside Lily remained empty. After dropping him at school, Edward had marched straight to the principal's office, insisting Timothy be moved to a different class for his emotional well-being. By lunchtime, Timothy found himself in Ms. Peterson's third-grade class across the hall, surrounded by unfamiliar faces and whispers. "That's the billionaire's kid," one boy hissed to another as Timothy picked at his store-bought lunch, appetite gone. "I heard he was playing poor to trick people," a girl added, not bothering to lower her voice. Timothy slouched lower in his seat. It seemed Vanessa had been busy spreading her version of events throughout the school. In just one day, he had lost his only friend and become an object of curiosity and ridicule. Meanwhile, in Ms. Roberts's class, Lily was having her own difficulties. The other children, who had largely ignored her before, were now pelting her with questions. "Is it true you gave your lunch to a billionaire? Did he give you any money? Were you just trying to make him like you so his dad would help your mom?" Each question felt like a knife twisting in her heart. Worst of all was Billy Thompson's sneering comment, "Bet you feel stupid now, feeding someone who could buy this whole school." By Friday, both children were miserable. Timothy had stopped eating altogether, pushing his food around his plate at home and at school. Lily had taken to hiding in the library during lunch to avoid the endless questions. It was in that quiet sanctuary that she found something unexpected, a folded piece of paper tucked inside her favorite book, Charlotte's Web. It was her own drawing, the one she'd given Timothy, but with an addition. Now there was a third figure, much taller than the other two, wearing what looked like a crown. Underneath, in careful handwriting, were the words, "I'm sorry. Being rich doesn't make you a better friend. Being kind does. You taught me that." Lily read the note 3 times, her anger slowly giving way to confusion. Had Timothy really valued their friendship, or was this just another rich kid's game? At the Wilson mansion, Timothy lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The room that had once seemed like a comfortable haven now felt like a gilded cage. What good were all his toys, his video games, his private swimming pool, if he had no one to share them with? A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. To his surprise, it was Diane, not the housekeeper who usually checked on him. "Your father is concerned about you," she said, perching delicately on the edge of his bed. "You've barely eaten all week." "I'm not hungry," Timothy mumbled. Diane studied him with calculating eyes. "This is about that Carson girl, isn't it? Vanessa told me all about her. Really, Timothy, your father placed you in that school to learn about the real world, not to fraternize with. Charity cases." Timothy sat up, anger flaring. "Lily is not a charity case. She's my friend, or she was, before Vanessa ruined everything." "Watch your tone, young man," Diane warned. "Vanessa was simply telling the truth. If your friendship couldn't survive that, it wasn't much of a friendship to begin with." "The truth?" Timothy challenged, finding courage in his desperation. "Like how Vanessa keeps forgetting to pack my lunch, or how she calls me names when Dad's not around. Is that the kind of truth you and Vanessa believe in?" Diane's perfectly composed face hardened. "I see. Well, perhaps it's time your father and I reconsider your educational options. Clearly, this experiment has failed." After she left, Timothy lay back down, a strange calm replacing his earlier anguish. He had finally spoken his truth, even if it hadn't been to the person who most needed to hear it. But what would happen now? Would his father believe him over Diane and Vanessa? Would he be shipped off to boarding school? And what about Lily? That night, Timothy made a decision. If he was going to lose everything anyway, he might as well try to make things right with the one person who had shown him true kindness. Sunday morning, while his father was at his home office and Diane was at her weekly spa appointment, Timothy snuck into the garage where he kept his bicycle. He had never ventured out alone before, had never been allowed to, but he had memorized Lily's address from the school directory. 3 miles. He could make it. What Timothy didn't know was that a storm was brewing, both literally as dark clouds gathered overhead, and figuratively as Vanessa spotted him from her bedroom window and reached for her phone with a cruel smile. And now I must ask you, dear viewers, what dangers await our young hero on his journey? Will he reach Lily in time? And if he does, will she even listen to what he has to say? Sometimes the bravest acts are also the most foolish, and in Timothy's case, this impulsive decision might just change everything. The first raindrops hit Timothy's face as he pedaled furiously through the unfamiliar streets of East Riverdale. His private school geography lessons hadn't prepared him for navigating the maze-like layout of the working-class neighborhood. Each wrong turn cost him precious time as the sky darkened ominously above. "Maple Street," Timothy muttered, squinting at street signs through the increasing downpour. She said she lived on Maple Street. Back at the Wilson mansion, chaos had erupted. The security system had alerted Edward to the garage door opening, and a quick check of the cameras revealed Timothy's unauthorized departure. Now Edward paced his office while shouting into his phone. "What do you mean you don't know where he went? He's 7 years old. He can't have gotten far on a bicycle." Diane stood in the doorway, the perfect picture of concerned stepmother. "Edward, darling, perhaps we should call the police." "Not yet," Edward snapped. "I don't want this in the press. I've got the security team searching the neighborhood." Vanessa sat on the staircase, listening with feigned innocence. She had already deleted the text she'd sent to her mother 20 minutes ago. The brat snuck out, probably going to see that Carson girl. Meanwhile, Timothy had finally found Maple Street, a row of small, tightly packed houses with peeling paint and chain-link fences. The rain was coming down in sheets now, soaking through his expensive jacket. Lightning flashed overhead, followed by a boom of thunder that made him flinch. Number 347. A tiny blue house with potted plants on the porch and a flickering porch light. Timothy abandoned his bicycle on the sidewalk and ran up the cracked concrete path, heart hammering as he knocked on the door. The woman who answered looked like an older, more tired version of Lily. Sarah Carson's eyes widened at the sight of the drenched boy on her doorstep. "Can I help you?" she asked cautiously. "Is Lily home?" Timothy managed through chattering teeth. "I'm Timothy from school." Recognition dawned on Sarah's face. "Timothy? The boy who—" She stopped herself, then stepped aside. "Come in before you catch your death." The interior of the Carson home was as small as Timothy had imagined, but unexpectedly warm and cheerful. Handmade decorations adorned the walls, and the furniture, though worn, was clean and comfortable. It smelled of baking bread and laundry soap, nothing like the sterile perfection of the Wilson mansion. "Lily!" Sarah called toward a hallway. "You have a visitor!" Lily appeared from what must have been her bedroom, freezing when she saw Timothy dripping on their welcome mat. "What are you doing here?" "I had to talk to you," Timothy said, suddenly aware of how crazy his plan had been. "To explain." Sarah looked between them. "Why don't I get you a towel, Timothy? And maybe some hot chocolate? You two can talk in the living room." As Sarah disappeared into the kitchen, Lily crossed her arms. "How did you even find my house?" "A school directory," Timothy admitted. "I rode my bike." In this storm, despite her anger, concern flickered across Lily's face. "Does your dad know where you are?" Timothy looked away. "Not exactly." "You ran away? Are you crazy?" Before Timothy could answer, Sarah returned with a towel and steaming mug. "Here you go, sweetie." "Lily, why don't you show Timothy where he can hang his wet jacket?" Left alone, the children stood in awkward silence until Timothy blurted out, "I didn't mean to lie to you." "You let me give you half my lunch when you could buy the whole cafeteria," Lily said, hurt evident in her voice. "I know, and I'm sorry. But I was really hungry those days. Vanessa kept taking my lunches, and I was too embarrassed to tell anyone." Lily's eyes narrowed. "Why would your stepsister do that?" "Because she hates me," Timothy said simply. "She thinks my dad loves me more than her, even though that's not true. He's always busy with work and his new wife." Something in his honest admission seemed to reach Lily. "So you weren't making fun of me?" "Never," Timothy insisted. "Your friendship was the only good thing in my life. Please, Lily, I'm still the same Timothy who likes blue and math and dogs. Being rich doesn't change that." Lily considered him for a long moment. "You should have told me the truth." "I know. I was afraid you'd treat me differently." "Like you're doing right now?" Lily challenged. "Running away from home, risking getting struck by lightning. The Timothy I know is smarter than that." Despite everything, Timothy found himself smiling. "So you still know me?" A reluctant smile tugged at Lily's lips. "Maybe, but no more secrets, okay?" Their fragile reconciliation was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, frowning. Who could that be in this weather? When she opened the door, Edward Wilson stood on the threshold, rain dripping from his expensive coat. Behind him, a black SUV idled at the curb, its headlights cutting through the storm. "I believe my son is here," Edward said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger and relief. Sarah stepped back, stunned. "You're Timothy's father." "Edward Wilson." He extended his hand automatically, then froze as recognition dawned on her face. "The Edward Wilson? Of Wilson Enterprises?" Edward nodded stiffly, stepping inside. His eyes found Timothy immediately. "Do you have any idea how worried I've been? The entire security team is searching for you." Timothy hung his head. "I'm sorry, Dad. I had to see Lily." Edward turned his attention to the little girl standing protectively beside his son. This was the famous Lily Carson. With her worn clothes and serious eyes, she looked both younger and older than her 7 years. "So you're Lily," Edward said, softening his tone. "I've heard a lot about you." "Yes, sir." Lily met his gaze directly. "Timothy is my friend." Something in her simple declaration struck Edward. When was the last time anyone had valued Timothy for himself, not as the Wilson heir? "Mr. Wilson, would you like some coffee?" Sarah offered, visibly uncomfortable with having a billionaire in her modest living room. "It's nothing fancy, but it's hot." Edward hesitated, then nodded. "That would be nice, thank you." As Sarah hurried to the kitchen, Edward sat on the worn sofa, motioning for Timothy to join him. Lily perched on the armchair across from them, watching warily. "Timothy, what you did today was dangerous and irresponsible," Edward began. "But I think I understand why you felt you had to do it." Timothy looked up in surprise. "You do? You were trying to save something important to you." Edward glanced at Lily. "A true friendship. And here's where I ask you, dear viewers, was this unexpected meeting the beginning of understanding between two very different worlds? Or would the vast divide of wealth and circumstance prove too great to bridge? The storm outside was nothing compared to the emotional tempest brewing within these four walls. Sarah Carson returned with a chipped mug of coffee, which Edward accepted with surprising grace. For several minutes, the adults made awkward small talk, while the children exchanged meaningful glances. "Your home is very warm," Edward commented, looking around at the handmade decorations and family photos. "Thank you," Sarah replied with quiet dignity. "It's not much, but we've made it our own." Edward's gaze landed on a framed photograph of a younger Sarah with a man who must have been Lily's father. "Your husband?" "Ex-husband," Sarah corrected. "He left us 3 years ago." An uncomfortable silence fell until Lily suddenly stood up. "Mom, can I show Timothy my room before he has to go?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "Keep the door open." As the children disappeared down the hallway, Edward cleared his throat. "Mrs. Carson, Ms., she corrected, "and please call me Sarah." "Sarah," Edward amended, "I want to apologize for my son's intrusion today." "It's no intrusion," Sarah assured him. "Lily's been miserable all week. I think she missed your son more than she wanted to admit." Edward studied his coffee. "Timothy's been the same way. He's had difficulty adjusting since his mother passed." "Lily mentioned that," Sarah said softly. "I'm sorry for your loss." "It was 2 years ago," Edward said automatically, the response practiced from countless business associates' condolences. "Time doesn't always make it easier," Sarah observed. "Just different." Edward looked up, struck by her simple wisdom. When was the last time anyone had spoken to him so directly, without agenda or pretense? Meanwhile, in Lily's tiny bedroom, barely the size of Timothy's walk-in closet, the children were deep in conversation. "This is where you sleep?" Timothy asked, looking around at the neatly made twin bed, the small desk fashioned from an old door atop 2 filing cabinets, and the bookshelf filled with library books. "It's not much," Lily shrugged, echoing her mother's words. "It's perfect," Timothy said honestly. "It feels like you." Lily smiled, then grew serious. "Timothy, your dad seems nice. Why didn't you tell him about Vanessa taking your lunches?" Timothy sat on the edge of her bed, shoulders slumping. "He's so busy all the time. And he really wants this new family to work. I didn't want to disappoint him." "But he's your dad," Lily insisted. "He should know the truth." Timothy considered this. "Maybe you're right, but what if he doesn't believe me? Diane always takes Vanessa's side." "Then make him see for himself," Lily suggested, a plan forming in her clever mind. "You know what we need? Evidence." Timothy's eyes widened. "Like in those detective shows, but how?" "I have an idea," Lily whispered, leaning closer. In the living room, Edward was checking his watch. "We should be going. I've left my wife and stepdaughter waiting at home." Sarah nodded, rising to her feet. "Of course." "Before we go," Edward hesitated, then continued, "I understand you work several jobs, Ms. Carson." Sarah stiffened. "I do what's necessary to provide for my daughter." "I didn't mean to offend," Edward said quickly. "I admire your dedication. Actually, I was wondering if you might be interested in a new opportunity." "Mr. Wilson," Sarah's voice cooled noticeably. "If you're offering charity—" "Not charity," Edward corrected. "A job. Wilson Enterprises is opening a new community outreach division. We need someone who understands the real needs of working families, someone with integrity and practical experience." Sarah's expression shifted from suspicion to cautious interest. "What kind of position?" "Community liaison. Office hours, benefits, salary starting at $85,000. The color drained from Sarah's face. "That's more than I make in 2 years. "It's what the position is worth," Edward said matter-of-factly. "And from what Timothy has told me about you and Lily, you're exactly the kind of person we need." "This isn't because of the children, is it?" Sarah asked shrewdly. Edward met her gaze. "Let's say their friendship has opened my eyes to certain blind spots in my perspective." Before Sarah could respond, the children returned, Timothy looking excited and Lily wearing a satisfied smile. "Dad, can Lily come over to our house sometime?" Timothy asked eagerly. "For the school project?" Edward glanced at Sarah, who seemed overwhelmed by their previous conversation. "If Ms. Carson agrees, I don't see why not." "Actually," Sarah said slowly, "I think that might be a good idea." Outside, the rain had stopped and the security team had retrieved Timothy's abandoned bicycle. As they prepared to leave, Lily handed Timothy a small, wrapped object. "What's this?" he asked. "Open it later," she whispered. "It's part of our plan." As the Wilson SUV pulled away, Timothy waved until Lily's house disappeared from view. In the front seat, Edward was uncharacteristically quiet, lost in thought. "Dad," Timothy ventured, "are you still mad at me?" Edward sighed. "I'm not mad, son. But we need to talk about why you felt you had to run away instead of coming to me with your problems." Timothy fidgeted with Lily's package. "You're always so busy, and Diane and Vanessa are always around." Edward frowned. "What does that have to do with anything?" "They!" Timothy trailed off, remembering Lily's advice. "Not yet. They needed evidence first." "They what, son?" "Nothing," Timothy said quickly. "I'm just glad you met Lily." Edward nodded thoughtfully. "She seems like a remarkable young lady, very different from Vanessa's friends." Timothy couldn't help but smile. "She is. She's the best friend I've ever had." And as they drove toward their mansion, both Wilson men were unaware that this day had set in motion events that would forever alter their family dynamics. Because while Timothy was reconciling with Lily, Vanessa had been busy at home, planting seeds of doubt in her mother's mind. And I wonder, dear viewers, what was in the mysterious package Lily gave Timothy? What was this plan the children had concocted? And how would Diane and Vanessa react to Edward's impromptu job offer to Sarah Carson? The chess pieces were moving into position, but who would ultimately call checkmate? The game was just beginning. Monday morning arrived with an unexpected announcement at the breakfast table. "I've scheduled a meeting with Principal Hayes today," Edward informed the family while checking emails on his tablet. "Timothy will be returning to Ms. Roberts's class effective immediately." Diane nearly choked on her mimosa. "Darling, are you sure that's wise?" "After all the drama last week." Edward didn't look up from his screen. "I'm sure. Also, Timothy's friend Lily will be coming over tomorrow afternoon to work on their school project." "Here," Vanessa's voice rose an octave. "That charity case is coming to our house." Edward finally looked up, his expression unreadable. "Vanessa, I don't ever want to hear you use that term again. Lily Carson is Timothy's friend and our guest. You will treat her with respect." Diane placed a manicured hand on her daughter's arm. "Vanessa simply means it might be awkward, Edward. The social gap is rather pronounced." "Perhaps that's precisely why this visit is important," Edward replied coolly. "For all of us." After breakfast, Timothy waited until he was alone in his room before carefully unwrapping Lily's package. Inside was a small digital voice recorder with a note: "Press record when Vanessa is being mean. Hide it in your pocket." "Mom uses one to record her night classes when she's too tired to take notes." Timothy turned the device over in his hands, heart racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. This was their plan, to gather evidence of Vanessa's bullying. But would it be enough to convince his father? And what if he got caught? At school, Miss Roberts welcomed Timothy back with a warm smile, and the other children seemed to have lost interest in his family's wealth now that a week had passed. All except for Lily, who greeted him with a conspiratorial whisper, "Did you get it?" Timothy nodded, patting his pocket where the recorder rested. "It's perfect, thank you." "Remember, you have to catch her in the act," Lily instructed, "and don't let her see it." Timothy spent the rest of the day anxiously waiting for an opportunity. It came sooner than expected. That afternoon, as he was retrieving books from his locker, Vanessa cornered him in the hallway. "So you're back in the poor kids' class," she sneered. "Did Daddy get tired of your whining?" Timothy's hand slipped into his pocket, pressing the record button. "Leave me alone, Vanessa." "Or what?" She leaned closer. "You'll run crying to your little girlfriend again? That was a cute stunt yesterday, by the way. Too bad it won't change anything." "My dad seems to like Lily," Timothy countered, gaining confidence. "He even offered her mom a job." Vanessa's face darkened. "What are you talking about?" "A really good job at his company, with benefits and everything." Timothy couldn't help feeling a little satisfaction at Vanessa's shocked expression. "You're lying," she hissed. "Nope." "Ask him yourself." Timothy started to walk away, but Vanessa grabbed his arm. "Listen, you little brat," she said, her voice low and venomous. "My mother didn't marry your father for his sparkling personality. We have a plan, and it doesn't include sharing his money with you or your pathetic friends. Once the adoption papers go through—" "Adoption papers?" Timothy interrupted, genuinely confused. Vanessa's eyes widened as she realized her slip. "Forget I said that. Just stay out of my way, or I'll make sure your daddy ships you off to boarding school where you belong." With that, she stormed off, leaving Timothy standing in the hallway, the recorder still running in his pocket. Adoption papers? What was Vanessa talking about? That evening, Timothy listened to the recording in the privacy of his bedroom. Vanessa's threats came through clearly, including her cryptic mention of adoption papers. But what did it mean? Was Edward planning to adopt Vanessa, or was there something more sinister at play? The next day brought a new level of anxiety as Timothy prepared for Lily's visit. The house staff had been instructed to prepare snacks and set up the library as a workspace for the children's project. Edward had even arranged to leave work early to be present. "Remember what we talked about," Diane told Vanessa as they waited in the foyer. "Best behavior. Your future depends on it." Vanessa rolled her eyes but nodded. "I'll play nice with the charity. With Lily." The doorbell rang precisely at 4 o'clock. When Henderson, the butler, opened the door, Sarah and Lily Carson stood on the threshold, both dressed in their Sunday best. Lily clutched her backpack with white knuckles, eyes wide as she took in the grandeur of the Wilson mansion. "Ms. Carson, Lily, welcome," Edward greeted them warmly. "Please come in." Timothy ran forward to meet them, unable to contain his excitement. "Lily, I want to show you everything. My room, the pool, the game room." "Timothy," Edward chuckled, "perhaps save the tour for after you've made some progress on your project?" Sarah stood awkwardly in the foyer, clearly uncomfortable with the opulence surrounding them. "This is very kind of you, Mr. Wilson." "Edward, please," he insisted, "and it's our pleasure. Diane, Vanessa, come meet our guests." Diane glided forward, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "How lovely to finally meet you both. Timothy has been quite enthusiastic about your visit." Vanessa stepped forward, the picture of adolescent politeness. "Hi, Lily. Your dress is really pretty." Lily, no fool despite her young age, merely nodded in acknowledgement. "Thank you." "Why don't we all have some refreshments in the solarium?" Edward suggested. "Henderson has prepared quite a spread." And as they followed Edward through the mansion, Timothy whispered to Lily, "Did you bring it?" Lily nodded subtly, patting her backpack. Phase 2 of their plan was in motion. In the solarium, tension hung in the air despite the beautiful setting and lavish refreshments. Diane maintained her perfect hostess smile while subtly interrogating Sarah about her background. Vanessa watched Lily like a hawk, her saccharine facade never slipping. Only Edward seemed genuinely at ease, engaging Sarah in a conversation about her perspective on community needs. "Timothy, why don't you show Lily your project materials?" Edward suggested after a while. "You can work at the table by the window." As the children spread their supplies across the table, Lily whispered, "Did you get anything on the recorder?" Timothy nodded, leaning close to her ear. "It's even worse than we thought. I think Diane and Vanessa have some kind of plan involving my dad." "What kind of plan?" Lily whispered back. "I don't know exactly, but it has something to do with adoption papers." Lily's brow furrowed. "That sounds serious. We need to get more evidence." "But how? Vanessa's being all nice today." Lily grinned, reaching into her backpack. "That's why I brought this." She pulled out a small book with a pink cover. "Vanessa's diary." Timothy gasped. "How did you get that?" I didn't, Lily admitted, but she doesn't know that. Watch and learn. And I can see the question on your minds, dear viewers. Would Lily's bold plan work? What were Diane and Vanessa really plotting? And would Edward finally see through their facade before it was too late? The pieces were moving faster now, the stakes higher than ever. But the game's most shocking moves were yet to come. Lily waited until the adults were deep in conversation before making her move. Clutching the pink notebook, she approached Vanessa with an innocent smile. "Vanessa, is this yours? I found it near the front door. It looks important." Vanessa's eyes widened in panic as she snatched the notebook from Lily's hands. "Where did you get this?" "Like I said, it was by the door." Lily maintained her innocent expression. "I didn't read it or anything." Vanessa clutched the notebook to her chest, visibly shaken. It's just school notes." "It looks like a diary to me," Lily continued, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention. "My mom says it's wrong to read other people's private thoughts." "It's not a diary," Vanessa insisted, her face flushing. "And even if it was, there's nothing important in it anyway." Diane, noticing the commotion, excused herself from the adult conversation. "Is everything all right, sweetheart?" "Fine, Mom," Vanessa said through gritted teeth. "Lily just found my notebook." Diane's gaze sharpened as she spotted the pink book in her daughter's hands. "Perhaps you should put that away somewhere safe." "I will," Vanessa agreed quickly. "Excuse me for a minute." As Vanessa hurried from the solarium, Diane turned a calculating gaze on Lily. "That was very thoughtful of you to return my daughter's property." "It was the right thing to do," Lily replied, meeting Diane's eyes without flinching. "My mom always says honesty is the best policy." Something dangerous flickered in Diane's expression before her perfect smile returned. "Yes. Well, your mother seems to have taught you many admirable values." When Vanessa returned, she was composed once more, but kept shooting suspicious glances at Lily. Meanwhile, Timothy had slipped away during the commotion to place the voice recorder beneath the solarium table, positioned to capture any conversation that might occur after they left. "How about that tour now?" Timothy suggested loudly. "Dad, can I show Lily the house?" Edward checked his watch. "I suppose a quick tour before you get back to work wouldn't hurt." As soon as the children were out of earshot, Diane leaned toward her daughter. "Did that little brat read your diary?" "I don't think so," Vanessa whispered back. "But how did she get it? I keep it locked in my desk drawer." "That's not important now," Diane hissed. "What matters is what's written in it. Tell me you haven't been stupid enough to write down our plans." Unbeknownst to them, the recorder beneath the table captured every word. Meanwhile, Timothy was leading Lily through the mansion's endless rooms, both of them bubbling with excitement at the success of their plan. "Did you see her face?" Lily giggled. "She totally believed I had her real diary." "It was brilliant," Timothy agreed. "But what now? We still don't know what they're planning." "We need to check the recorder after they leave the solarium," Lily decided. "But we have to be careful. Your stepmom seems really suspicious of me now." Their tour eventually led them to Timothy's bedroom suite, larger than Lily's entire house. Despite herself, she gaped at the private bathroom, walk-in closet and entertainment system that would put a movie theater to shame. "This is all yours?" she asked in disbelief. Timothy nodded, suddenly embarrassed by the excess. "It's too much, isn't it?" "It's not about how much stuff you have," Lily said thoughtfully. "It's about what you do with it. My mom always says being rich isn't just about money, it's about how you treat people." Timothy considered this wisdom. "You know what? When this is all over, I'm going to ask my dad to donate half my toys to the children's hospital." "I don't need all this." "That's a great idea," Lily agreed enthusiastically. Their moment of connection was interrupted by a knock on the door. To their surprise, it was Edward. "Having fun?" he asked with a smile. "Dad, we were just—" Taking a break from your project? Edward raised an eyebrow, though his expression remained amused. I thought I might have a word with Lily, if that's all right. Timothy and Lily exchanged nervous glances. Had they been discovered? Alone, if you don't mind, son, Edward added. Perhaps you could check on our other guests? Heart pounding, Timothy reluctantly left his room, throwing Lily an encouraging look before closing the door. Edward sat on the edge of Timothy's bed, gesturing for Lily to join him. Lily, I want to thank you for being such a good friend to my son. Timothy's my best friend, Lily said simply. Edward nodded. I can see that, and I think you've been good for him. He's different when he's around you, more confident, happier. He's good for me too, Lily admitted. He's the only one at school who doesn't treat me differently because my mom works 3 jobs. Edward studied her thoughtfully. You're a very mature young lady for 7 years old. My mom says I had to grow up fast, Lily shrugged. But it's okay, I still get to be a kid sometimes. You should get to be a kid all the time, Edward said softly. That's what childhood is for. Lily met his gaze directly. Is that why you let Vanessa be mean to Timothy? So he can be a kid? Edward looked as if she'd slapped him. What are you talking about? Vanessa is really mean to him when you're not around, Lily said firmly. She takes his lunch and calls him names and makes him feel bad about his mom dying. That's a very serious accusation, Edward said, his expression unreadable. It's not an accusation. It's the truth. Lily's chin lifted defiantly. And your new wife lets her do it. Edward's face darkened. How do you know all this? Timothy told me. And I've seen it myself. Lily hesitated, then added, Adults don't always see what happens between kids. Sometimes they only see what they want to see. Something in Edward's expression shifted, a realization dawning, like a father who's been too busy with his new marriage to notice his son's unhappiness. Lily didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. Meanwhile, Timothy had returned to the solarium, only to find it empty. Where had everyone gone? Panicking slightly, he dropped to his hands and knees to retrieve the recorder, only to come face to face with Vanessa, who was reaching for it from the other side of the table. Looking for something, little brother? Vanessa asked, holding up the voice recorder with a triumphant smile. Timothy's blood ran cold. Give that back. I don't think so. Vanessa pocketed the device. Mom was right. You and your little girlfriend are smarter than you look. Where's my dad? Timothy demanded. And Lily's mom? Dad took Lily for a little chat, and Diane is showing Miss Carson the garden, which means it's just you and me. Vanessa's smile turned predatory. Time for a reality check, Timothy. No matter what you think you've discovered, no one will believe you. My mother has your father wrapped around her finger. By this time next month, he'll have adopted me, and shortly after that, you'll be shipped off to boarding school in Switzerland. You're lying, Timothy whispered, though fear gripped his heart. Am I? Check your father's desk drawer. The adoption papers are already drawn up. As for you... Vanessa leaned closer. Let's just say Diane has convinced your father that you need structure and discipline after your recent behavioral issues. Running away was the last straw. Timothy felt tears threatening, but forced them back. My dad loves me. He wouldn't send me away. Your dad loves the idea of a perfect family, Vanessa corrected. And my mother is very good at giving people what they think they want. Before Timothy could respond, Edward's voice rang out from the doorway. What's going on here? Timothy and Vanessa jumped apart guiltily. Edward stood with Lily at his side, his expression grave. Nothing, Daddy, Vanessa said sweetly. Timothy and I were just having a little chat about the importance of privacy. Weren't we, Timothy? Timothy looked from Vanessa to his father, then to Lily, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. Dad, Timothy said, his voice stronger than he felt, Vanessa took something that belongs to me. And I need to tell you the truth about a lot of things. Edward's gaze shifted to Vanessa. "What did you take from your brother?" "It's just a stupid toy," Vanessa dismissed. "He was spying on us." "Give it to me," Edward demanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. Reluctantly, Vanessa pulled the recorder from her pocket and handed it to Edward. "It doesn't matter anyway. No one will believe whatever lies he's recorded." Edward's expression hardened. "We'll see about that." And now, dear friends, the moment of truth had arrived. Would the children's plan succeed? Would Edward finally see through the facade of his perfect new family? And what other secrets might the recorder reveal? The final pieces of this emotional chess match were about to fall into place. The tension in Edward Wilson's home office was palpable as he sat behind his massive mahogany desk, the small voice recorder placed prominently before him. Timothy and Lily sat side by side on a leather sofa, while Sarah Carson stood protectively behind them. Diane and Vanessa had been summoned but had not yet arrived. "Before we listen to this," Edward said gravely, "I want you to understand something, Timothy. If what Lily has told me is true, if Vanessa and Diane have been mistreating you, that's unacceptable, no matter what." Timothy nodded, throat too tight to speak. "And if these accusations are false," Edward continued, "there will be consequences for that as well. The truth matters in this house. Always." The door opened, and Diane entered with Vanessa in tow. Diane's perfect composure showed the first cracks of strain, her smile brittle as she took in the scene. "Edward, darling, what's this urgent family meeting about?" she asked, her voice carefully modulated. "Vanessa and I were just about to leave for her piano lesson." "The lesson will have to wait," Edward said coldly. "We have more pressing matters to discuss." He held up the recorder. "Such as what's on this device?" Diane's smile faltered. "A toy? Really, Edward, I don't see—" "Sit down, both of you," Edward commanded, his CEO voice brooking no argument. Once everyone was seated, Edward pressed play. The recorder first captured Vanessa's hallway threats to Timothy about the adoption papers and boarding school. Then came the solarium conversation between Diane and Vanessa. "Did that little brat read your diary?" "I don't think so, but how did she get it? I keep it locked in my desk drawer." "That's not important now. What matters is what's written in it. Tell me you haven't been stupid enough to write down our plans." "Of course not, Mom. I'm not an idiot, but I did write about how annoying Timothy is and how I can't wait until we get rid of him." "Keep your voice down. This is exactly why I told you not to keep a diary. The Carson woman is smarter than she looks, and that daughter of hers is too observant for her own good. What are we going to do? Stick to the plan. In 3 weeks, your adoption will be finalized. Then we focus on convincing Edward that Timothy's recent behavioral issues require specialized attention overseas. I've already researched several boarding schools in Switzerland. After that, it's just a matter of time before we update Edward's will." The recording ended, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. Edward's face had turned to stone, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of his desk. "Edward," Diane began, her voice honeyed with desperation, "surely you don't believe this obvious setup. The children clearly manipulated the recording." "Did they?" Edward's voice was dangerously quiet, "because what I heard matches exactly with the adoption papers I found in your desk drawer last night, papers I never agreed to, much less signed." Diane paled. "You went through my personal things?" "After Lily mentioned some concerns, I decided to do a little investigating of my own." Edward opened his desk drawer and removed a folder, including hiring a private investigator to look into your background. "You had me investigated?" Diane's practiced composure crumbled. "How dare you? How dare I?" Edward's voice rose. "You planned to send my son away. You forged my signature on legal documents. And according to this report, you've done it all before." Timothy and Lily exchanged confused glances as Sarah placed protective hands on their shoulders. What do you mean, done it before? Timothy asked in a small voice. Edward's expression softened as he looked at his son. Diane Bennett has been married 3 times before me. All wealthy men, all with children from previous marriages. In each case, the children were sent to boarding school shortly after the marriage, and the husband's will was adjusted to favor Diane and her daughter. Vanessa's eyes widened in shock as she turned to her mother. Mom, is that true? For the first time, Diane seemed at a loss for words. Vanessa, darling, it's more complicated than that. You said my other stepdads didn't want me, Vanessa whispered, hurt evident in her voice. You said they sent me away because they didn't love me enough. I did what I had to do for us, Diane insisted, for our future. By lying to me? Vanessa's voice cracked. By making me think I wasn't good enough? The realization that had been building in Timothy's mind suddenly crystallized. That's why you hate me so much, he said quietly to Vanessa, because you thought my dad would send you away, like the others. Shut up! Vanessa snapped, tears streaming down her face. You don't know anything. But he does, Edward interjected gently, and he's right. Vanessa, you've been manipulated just as much as I have. Your mother has been using your insecurities to turn you against Timothy. Diane stood abruptly. This is absurd. Come, Vanessa, we're leaving. You're not going anywhere except to pack your things, Edward stated firmly. My lawyers will be contacting you about divorce proceedings, and given the evidence of fraud and conspiracy, I suggest you don't contest it. You can't do this to us, Diane hissed, her beautiful face contorted with rage. After everything I've done, all the sacrifices, the only thing you've sacrificed is your humanity, Edward cut her off. And your daughter's chance at a normal childhood. Henderson will help you pack. You have 2 hours. As security escorted a fuming Diane from the room, Vanessa remained seated, looking lost and broken. What about me? She asked in a small voice. Edward sighed. That's up to you, Vanessa. You've done some cruel things to Timothy, but you're still a child yourself. If you want to try to make amends, to be part of this family for real this time, I'm willing to give you that chance. Vanessa looked at Timothy, shame evident in her eyes. Why would you want me to stay after everything I've done? To everyone's surprise, it was Lily who answered. Because everyone deserves a second chance, and because being mean usually means you're hurting inside. Timothy nodded in agreement. We could start over, be real siblings this time. Vanessa wiped her tears, a genuine smile breaking through for perhaps the first time. I'd like that. 3 months later, the Wilson mansion was transformed. Gone was the sterile perfection Diane had insisted upon, replaced by the comfortable chaos of a real home. Vanessa, free from her mother's toxic influence, was slowly becoming the big sister Timothy had always wanted. With therapy and patience, the wounds of the past were beginning to heal. Sarah Carson had accepted the position at Wilson Enterprises and was already making a difference in the community outreach program. Her practical perspective and genuine compassion had earned her respect throughout the company, particularly from its CEO. And as for Timothy and Lily, their friendship had only grown stronger through their adventure. They remained inseparable at school, and their families had developed a warm relationship that bridged their different worlds. On this particular Sunday afternoon, the unlikely extended family gathered in the Wilson garden for a barbecue. Edward, manning the grill with unexpected skill, caught Sarah's eye and smiled warmly. Timothy and Lily raced across the lawn, playing tag with Vanessa, their laughter filling the air. Who would have thought, Sarah mused, coming to stand beside Edward, that an empty lunchbox would lead to all this? Edward watched his son, truly happy for the first time since his mother's death, and nodded. Sometimes the smallest kindnesses revealed the greatest truths. Audrine, As they stood together in comfortable silence, Edward found himself reflecting on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. From tragedy to deception, to finally healing and hope. And it had all begun because a little girl with nothing had offered half her sandwich to a boy who had everything, except what he truly needed. "You know," Edward said softly, "I think I'm finally learning what real wealth looks like." Sarah smiled, understanding perfectly. "It was never about the money, was it?" "No," Edward agreed, watching the children play. "It was about this: family, connection, love." And as the sun began to set on their newfound happiness, Timothy caught Lily in a hug, both of them tumbling to the ground in fits of giggles. In that perfect moment, the truth was clear for all to see. The richest people in the world aren't those with the most possessions, but those with the most love to give. Sometimes, dear viewers, the greatest fortunes are found in the most unexpected places, like a shabby lunchbox containing half a peanut butter sandwich and the promise of friendship. And in the end, isn't that the most valuable inheritance of all?